and gents, and welcome to another episode of Pull the Trigger. I'm your host, Sandra Gonzalez. I am a retired Marine officer, turns life coach speaker. I had the honor, the distinction of serving 20 years of service as a U.S. Marine, and now I help high caliber entrepreneurs kick self-doubt to the curb. I help them step into any room and stand out as a leader. Now, the purpose of this podcast is for you to take action, for you to kick self-doubt to the curb and pull the trigger. So the title of this podcast is very appropriate for one of my favorite guests, who happens to be my brother. He's part of my family now, Joey Florentino. Now, let me tell you about Joey. I feel so much more safer just because this man is in my life. Now, having said that, ladies and gents, please put your phones aside. You're gonna want to give us your undivided attention, because attention equates to retention. So take copious notes, because my brother, my guest, is a resident expert, and you're gonna know why. So Joey Florentino, is a retired chief of police who served 30 years of service in law enforcement. He's also an inspirational speaker. He served as a state certified active shooter, right, instructor for not only police officers, right, but for dispatchers as well. Now, Joey provides not only inspirational speaking, right, but he also provides personal and professional training for women's groups and organizations. Now, he's married to this gorgeous goddess, this chingona, which is the reason why I know Joey. He's married to this badass CEO, Mrs. Heidi Florentino, who I'm so honored to call my sister. And, I'm so happy and grateful. That's how we met, Joey. But I know you have 2 kids as well. They're not kids, they're young adults. What else did I miss? Welcome. I'm so happy to have you here, Joey.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Sandra. I'm happy to help doing these kind of talks. So my career was 8 years with the city police department here in San Diego, a community called National City. And then I liked working with kids. So I moved over to a lot of school districts. Some of you parents may be aware, some of you folks may be aware that school districts can start their own police departments, which are actually certified. We're regular cops. We just choose to work with kids. City police departments have a lot of competing interests. So, for example, San Diego PD, great police department, but they've got an entire city they're responsible for. And so if there's stuff needed at a school, if it's not a priority 1 or 0, where it's a life or death situation, and there's something going on in the city, a bank robbery, a homicide, a domestic violence call, the schools suffer. And so a lot of school districts will invest in school resource officer programs, which are contracted officers, or some districts will start their own police department. They also get a lot more customized service, because not every officer wants to be a SWAT officer. Not every officer wants to be a juvenile officer. There are officers that don't want to work with kids. It's not my thing, and God bless them. They'd rather be out on graveyards, putting real bad guys in jail. So I switched over to that, and I did that for 22 years. So as far as speaking, it's just part of the job, and it's fun. It's fun to get in front of parents groups and talk about safety and what are the real threats, right? Active shooter. Everybody hears active shooter. Well, what are the real threats? What should I be preparing for? Should I be focusing on active shooter as a parent? Should I be focusing on more localized immediate threats, mental health? I mean, we could take this conversation into so many different kids suffering with their own gender identity or their own sexual orientation, or just the depression of COVID, and what we suffered and what we saw, that the lockdowns, and I'm not getting political at all. I'm just saying the reality of the situation is what resulted in the lockdowns for our kids. And so that's just a little bit about why I like doing what I do. I also feel it brings me a little karma too, because I have a wife and a daughter. So hopefully they'll get some of this positive energy karma.
And Joey, when the Florentinos come over to my house, I could listen to you all day. I could just listen to you and take notes. And this is one of the many reasons why you're here today. But, I know the viewers that are watching, they have like this insatiable appetite for growth. And I know a lot of, I attract a lot of high caliber women. So how can we be safe nowadays? And, having said that, I want to ask you my first question, if I may, is how should a woman, right, approach personal and professional safety now?
First and foremost, you don't have to become a ninja, right? So you're like, I want to be safer in my personal or my professional life. I want to be able to protect my spouse, my significant other, my partner, my children. But so often, if you go, and we can talk later about selecting those subject matter experts, depending on what you need, you don't have to spend, first and foremost, let's acknowledge that women and men, whether you are a career-minded person, whether you're a homemaker, whether you're a single parent, whether you're all of the above, you don't have the time. There's not enough hours in the day for a professional person, a homemaker. We have a common relative, a friend who is a super mom of 3 boys this lady is busier than any full-time career person, and God bless her. So where does she fit in safety, and how does safety fit in? And so I think first and foremost is how do you put safety as part of your life? How do you set things in place so that they become automatic? So that you're not having to think about it as much, because remember, to use a Marine or law enforcement term, we fight like we train like we fight. When things happen, when stuff hits the fan, you're going to react. And how you've mentally prepared is how you're going to react. And also, I don't want folks to think that they need to become these ninjas and then now they're paranoid. I kind of made that mistake with my daughter. We were having a conversation the other day, and my daughter, when she was 8, had a bulletproof panel in her backpack. She knew how to respond to an active shooter. She has, which is some of the medical stuff. She's got a trauma kit. She can do arterial bleeding control. She can apply a tourniquet. And we were having this conversation. And she said, a little bit of my anxiety, I think, is from my dad. In addition to all those other talks about good touch, bad touch, and nobody, so I was a little overzealous as a dad. So I don't want women, especially, but men, to feel that way. And so I think the best thing you can do is really understand the threats that are out there.
Yes.
Understand, realistically in this.
I love that you highlight this, Joey, because, as a single woman myself, right, divorced, my 2 daughters, they're young adults, independent, living on their own. But as a single woman, and as a retired Marine, I think, man, in a way, I do have to be this ninja, so to speak, to take care of myself and my mom, should there be some type of, threat. But I love how you really, you calm me, so to speak, and this is, I think, one of the many reasons why you and I can talk forever. It's because it's like you understand me, and things are scary nowadays, right? Things are so scary. So I love that you say that very directly. We don't have to be ninjas. We just have to know the very basics. And I would assume, right, develop that situational awareness to know what to do in case something happens. So what are some things to be concerned with? Like, what are real threats? And I know there's so many, but what are some real threats, Joey?
Well, first and foremost, everybody wants to know about active shooter. And when I talk about active shooter situations, or what we call active threat, the public knows it as active shooter, but we address it as active threat in the law enforcement community. We're trying to transition because In countries where guns are not allowed, you're having sword attacks, you're having knife attacks, you're having explosive attacks. People can make explosives very simply with products they buy at the hardware store. So it's really active threat. In America, we have more access to guns, so we have more shootings. Other countries, if you look at these events around the world, they're using other weapons. They're using cars and things like that. But and I actually wrote down the stats because I didn't want to screw it up. So in 2012, and this data is a little dated, I need to update it, but there were 322 million Americans based on the census. You are 2.16 times more likely to be struck by lightning than be involved in an active shooter event. You are also 417 more times likely to be struck or to be struck by lightning than win the lotto. So active shooter events really are a plane crash. They're so frequent, they're so few and far between. However, when they do happen, we usually have significant casualties. They affect our little ones, which are our most precious things in the world. When we look at our little ones, that's our job to protect them. So I think first and foremost, yes, be prepared for that. But when I teach advanced medical, bleeding control, trauma bleeding control, things like that, which any person can carry, this little kit right here that I have could literally save you or your loved one's life or your friend's life. You don't need to be a paramedic. You don't need to be a SWAT paramedic, which we have in law enforcement where they're paramedics and SWAT officers. You don't need to have that level of training to really save your life. So the threats now are, yes, crime is on the rise. And yes, it is a scarier world. I'm a history nerd, so I tend to look at global things and it's like, okay, it's not bad as leading up to World War II. I mean, you look at certain things where in times in history, but yes, you don't also want to downplay that crime is on the rise. I did take the liberty for today's presentation just to kind of check the latest stats. And I had them written down here. So homicides nationwide, but 2019 to 2020 have gone up about 30%. So violence is on the rise. We are on an uptick. If you go back and study the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, we had these upticks in crime. A lot of reasons for that. They tend to get a little political in discussion, which I found that politics tends to divide people. So I'd rather stick with the reality that crime is on an upswing. And so as a woman, as a person, as a man, first and foremost, and I don't mean to belittle the audience, but we're so darn busy. These darn things, these phones, right? I mean, if you're a professional person, you are glued to this. You are glued to this. And I get it. I am married to a woman who works 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I mean, she loves her job. She's much like you. She's a career woman. And she has emails. If she doesn't reply, that's her business. That's what she's built from scratch. So simple things like when you're in a cab or when you're in an Uber, do you look up? Do you kind of put your phone down? Are you looking around? Are you trusting the Uber driver to get you where you're going? One of the best things I heard, and this was actually from a woman. I love to give credit where I learn things. But when you get into an Uber or a cab, you put the location in. And if for some reason the driver deviates from the quickest route, let him or her know. Hey, why are you going this way? My phone says, it shows them that you are paying attention. It shows them that you're not going to be a victim.
Exactly.
Talk about the threats. One of the most important things, and I tell women this, and every woman can relate to this. You're sitting on a bar stool and some guy looks over at you, or it could be whatever your orientation is. Somebody looks over at you that you think they're going to come over and buy you a drink and hit on you, and you don't want them to. There's a look, especially that women have. I've seen it a million times. I've seen it too many times. Don't you come over here, and there's that look that just shuts us down. It's resting bitch face. When you are out in public as a woman and as a man too, this is not just for women.
Yeah.
You need to have that permanent resting bitch face when you're walking around. Watch Animal Planet shows. This is not rocket science. People are animals. Who do the lions go after? Who do the hyenas go after? They go after the weaker gazelle. You always watch them where the gazelle is kind of eating and just enjoying the savannah. Yeah. And a lion pops, not the big bull, not the big mom who's pissed off and protecting her calves, the one who's looking around. These predators, because they are, these criminals that prey on people, they don't want to necessarily have somebody who's going to put up a fight. So when you're walking to your car, do you have your phone down? Are you looking around? Are you giving that resting bitch face? If you're a man, are you giving that asshole? Don't you try and make me a victim. I will put up a fight. I like to say when I was in law enforcement, one of the things that helped me the most was I never tried to be the biggest badass, but I would say to people, to a suspect, if I thought they were going to fight, I'm like, dude, we can fight, but I'm going to hit you with the stick. I'm going to win, or I'm not going to fight fair. I'm going to push a button on my radio and all my friends are going to come and they're going to kick your ass. So can we just avoid that, right? Those kind of verbal judo techniques, so you don't have to carry yourself like you're the biggest badass in the world, but you're carrying yourself with an attitude that I'm not going to be an easy victim. You may kick my ass, but dude, I'm going to gouge your eyes out. I'm going to take these heels off and I'm going to poke them in your throat. I mean, so I know we're getting a little graphic and we can get very graphic. When we're talking about truly fighting for one's life, I want you to carry yourself that way. We live in a civilized society. We want people to be nice. And I'm not saying to be mean or rude, but when you're by yourself, when you're on a business trip, when you're on a strange city, when you are a parent and you're loading the kids in the minivan and there's all that chaos and stuff. I've had parents that after I've talked and we've kind of worked stuff out together. Again, this is not all my stuff. This is from engaging in conversations with people by yourself. If you have a 12-year-old, in law enforcement, we use a term called contact and cover. One officer is doing the talking, the other officer is just looking around, just paying attention. So you look at your son or your daughter, hey, you got the watch? You got my back? And now they're your little cover officer. Right? They're your little cover partner. So you're loading up the baby. You're busy because, again, how do we fit this into our lives? You have to be a parent. You have to go to softball games. You have to load up the baby, right? You've got a 10-year-old there, use them. And those are all conversations in themselves is how mommy, I'm scared. No, you're not scared. You're just making sure a car is not going to hit us. You're making sure nobody's going to walk up behind mommy. That's all you're doing. You just let me know. And you're building that strength and capacity. You're building strong young men and women. Right? That they can take care of themselves. No, you're always looking around. You're just paying attention. What if a car comes and we need to get out of the way? What if there is a weird person who might be coming up to us? So now as a parent, now you're loading your kid in the car. You're doing everything you can do to make sure the baby's safe, strapped in right. But you got a little pair of eyes behind you. And so that's what I mean by you don't have to be this Green Beret, SWAT, Navy SEAL. You just need to be somebody who's informed and really, again, integrates that safety into your everyday life.
I love that, Joey. And I've learned already so much from you. I think about you. So I'm here in Tulum, as you already know, by myself. And I've already incorporated some of the things you've taught me, this resting bitch face, so to speak. And some of the verbal judo techniques. So, I do get looks from men, and they've asked me, ¿Estás sola? Are you here by yourself? And I'm like, oh no, my boyfriend's coming right now.
Absolutely. I've known, on a side note, I've known women who aren't married to wear wedding rings. And these are not things that I have developed. These are things that as I teach classes, I'm getting as much out of my audience. I am not the regional expert. I've just been doing this a long time. So I picked up, hey, I tell people, I'm going to steal that. You don't mind, do you? And I ran into a woman one time, she was a teacher. And she said, when I travel or I'm out, I wear a wedding ring a lot. Because that will, a lot of men are dogs anyways, and they're going to hit on you. But she said that tend to calm things down when she's out, just like you're saying, put a fake glass ring on or whatever, and you don't have to buy anything expensive. And no, my husband's in there shopping. My significant other is in there shopping. No, I'm meeting my significant other in 5 minutes, he or she is coming. And so that I'm glad that you're using that. And that was something that I got from a teacher who just really has made things a little easier on me. It's allowed me to, nothing wrong with being single at all, but it's blending it into your environment.
Right. So. Right. So, and what a great idea for women that do feel uncomfortable. I'm single, so I'm not going to wear a ring.
Totally.
And I'm going to be confident enough to now, because you've empowered me, use those verbal judo techniques, so to speak, and that resting bitch face if I need to use it. I know.
I'm sorry, on that topic, one of the things I want to make sure, because I know we don't have limited time together, but I want to stress for women and even for some of our smaller framed men. The movies have done us such a disservice. Mm-hmm. I love the movies. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, the Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Sylvester Stallone, the Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones. Yeah. But I tell you what, one punch to the face and I'm tearing, I got a black eye. I might have a broken nose. And you watch the classic example is that second Indiana Jones movie where they have that dining scene and they're eating all the monkeys and crazy food and stuff. I mean, that's a great movie from the early 80s. But Harrison Ford, I counted one day just sitting there in that movie. I think he got punched. I think I counted like 87 punches to his face and he had a little cut lip.
Yeah, okay.
So you as a person who's maybe never had any fighting training, any type of self-defense training, you're thinking this person who is this man, I'm a woman, or I'm a small frame man, I'm 5'5", 5'2" man who may be 120 pounds. I can't even hurt this 6-foot man who's gonna assault me. The story I love to tell is I was a brand new cop and we go into a bar, and it was actually one of the few times in my career where it was one of those like all out, knockdown, drag out bar fights. I don't even remember how it started. I don't remember why we were there. We were calling for help and it was beer bottles flying. I mean, it was actually a lot of fun. When you're young, that kind of stuff is fun. But I remember we had a small framed petite officer, female, on our squad. And it was one of the coolest things I ever saw. She ran up and jumped on a table and jumped on a guy's back. She was probably 5'2", 5'3", maybe 110 pounds, and started, I know it's not a good thing to say, but this is 30 years ago, started choking this guy out. He was probably 6 foot, 6'2" maybe. And it was almost as if the fighting didn't stop, but it was kind of like her feet are literally, she's swinging in, and she's trying to get what we call a lateral vascular, the carotid neck restraint of the guy. And we're all just kind of watching, this is cool. And she ended up in the air, applying it correctly, cut off the blood flow. The guy fell, she handcuffed him. And we were just, she never bought a beer after that. We always, that was badass. That was cool. You never buy a beer again the whole time we're on the squad together. So, and some of the most badass male officers I've seen, we actually had a guy that didn't make it. He was 6'6", big guy. He didn't make it through field training because he was just the gentle giant. He couldn't fight. And people would want to challenge him because drunk people want to challenge, I'm going to kick your ass. And we're like, dude, you could level him. His hands were like the size of my two hands put together was one hand.
Yeah.
But yet you have these officers who are tiny, physically tiny. But when we talk about self-defense, I mean, blows to the throat. You hit me in my Adam's apple, I'm not going to be able to breathe. Yeah. If I do a palm heel strike or a forearm strike to your ear, it's going to hurt. I don't know if you've ever been hit in the ear, but it hurts, right? So there are things that you can learn. Doesn't matter the size. I have the same weak points as you. I'm 5'11", 190 pounds. I have the same weak points as someone who is 5'2". I have the same weak points as someone who is 6'6" or 7 feet tall. We all have these points of our body where, and remember, as a private citizen, you're not an MMA fighter. Your job is to first try to avoid the conflict, right? Resting bitch face, carrying your cell phone in your pocket. Don't even try it, mother effer. Don't even try it, right? But if that doesn't work, then if somebody comes up to you, you're going to give them that verbal judo. You're going to give them that. You might pick up the steering wheel club that's in your car and go, I will bash your skull in, right? Making them think. If it does get physical, you can do some real damage. And your goal is not to necessarily win the fight. You're not in the octagon. You're not in the boxing ring. Your goal is to sting, to distract, and escape. Right now, if you can render them unconscious, if you have a fire extinguisher, which is one of the best tools that people have at their disposal, which they fail to really use. My partner and I one night trying to put out a car fire, both sprayed each other with fire extinguishers. Trust me, you can't see. Thank God it was before the time of everybody had a cell phone camera because they had to call another ambulance to wash our eyes out. We put the fire out, we saved the guy, but we couldn't see. We were those left. So your goal is to do those things in order. And then if you do have to get physical, your goal is one of the greatest tools out there. And I don't know if I'll have time to get into self-defense objects and weapons and stuff. Yeah. The taser that a police officer carries has a 5-second cycle. Call it a ride. So you're going to tase the bad person, the person you're fighting with. It's going to last for 5 seconds. Our goal is to get you handcuffed. For a private citizen, taser makes which are legal in most states. You got to be careful. You got to check the laws where you're at. As far as I don't think they're allowed in airports and on airplanes and things like that. But they're CO2 operated. They're not a firearms cartridge, so they're not a firearm. But the difference is for a civilian, non-military, non-law enforcement, is the taser that they market for the civilian world is you zap the person and it has a 30-second cycle because you're supposed to lay the taser down and run away. So now you've got 30 seconds to run away, right? So that's what the goal is. Say you're walking to your car through a parking garage,
Yes.
and you have maybe you have your taser in the purse, and somebody runs up and grabs you from behind, you zap them. I've been tased. It's part of our training. I would rather get shot than tased. It hurts. People say, ask what it's like. You're just locked up. You cannot move. And so the goal is how Taser markets it: put the taser down and you run. Now, obviously, if you really feel a threat, you can hit the person in the head. What I want you to do, what most self-defense experts will say, is you want to get away. You want to first and foremost protect you and your family. Your goal is not to cave their head in and that kind of stuff, unless, of course, there is a fight and you feel that's necessary. I'm not going to make that decision for you, but there are tools out there that are available.
Yeah. And you bring up such a good point, Joey, because so now I know, like, only have 30 seconds to take off running. Now I know. So
sorry, you're going to ditch your red bottoms. I hate to say it. I know how expensive women's shoes are. I have a wife, and sorry, you're going to ditch your red bottoms, or maybe you pick them up and carry them. I prefer you ditch them. You're going to run on bare feet and you're going to get away, because your goal is to get away. Your goal is, it's what we teach also too in the run, hide, fight.
You just taught me something right now, Joey, that, like, I didn't know. I'm like, oh shoot, I have 30 seconds. I again, because the movies and what we see, I assumed I had longer. I don't know. Maybe
if you choose to go with a taser, and that's a whole nother discussion that we can get into, which is, what do you carry? Pepper spray is great, but one of the first things I talk about is people get these tools, and we can talk about firearms as well, because they're very. I've heard so many men and women, I got a gun. And I'm very pro Second Amendment. I'm pro, this is your choice. I don't want to get into the politics of it. If you want to get a firearm to protect yourself, that is your right. But what training do you have? How have you selected the firearm? Do you really know how to use it? Because if you don't know how to use it, now, even if the person trying to hurt you doesn't have a gun, guess what? There's a gun in the fight, right? You just brought a gun into the fight. So, so those are things, when you talk about whether or not you want to go with a taser, that tool is available to you to purchase, depending on what state you live in. Then you talk about pepper spray, that's more common. First and foremost, I always tell people, if you're going to carry pepper spray, spray a little bit on a Q-tip, rub it under your eyes, because anybody that's attacking you that is that emboldened, that has somebody to attack a man or a woman walking through I'll keep using the shopping mall garage. He or she has probably been arrested before. They probably fought with the cops. They've probably been pepper sprayed. Pepper spray hurts me just like it would hurt you. But I've been sprayed around, estimated about 35 times, because whenever cops start spraying, it gets all over everybody else. We spray each other just as much as we spray the bad guy. So I know I'm not going to die. It's going to burn, snot, boogers, coughing, all that kind of stuff. But I can fight through it, because I'm like, I know what to expect. If it's your first time, when you go to the police academy, I'm sure you as a Marine, in basic, your first time in the gas house, tell me I did not just want to panic your first time being exposed to tear gas. I did. I mean, it was like, and the instructors have fun and they oversaturate you and they really want you to feel it. But if that's the first time you feel it, I don't want the first time you feel it, because if you and I are close, if you grab me by the throat and I pull out my pepper spray and spray you, it's going to get on me. It's going to bounce back. It's going to form a cloud. I'm going to get exposed to it. Now I'm running with my eyes kind of squinted. Now I'm having difficulty breathing. Well, I guarantee I would 99% that person who's going after you has been pepper sprayed before. So now he or she has the advantage over you, because now you're having difficulty breathing, you're having a difficulty with your vision, and he or she has been pepper sprayed before. He or she has fought with the cops, either in a custody situation in jail or prison, or just on the street with the cops. So when we talk about arming ourselves, I'm a big fan of people carrying things to help protect themselves, but did you really think it through? Plus, also, 5 to 10% of the people are allergic to the pepper, and they'll have allergic reactions. We've had that happen where we need to get paramedics going because we just pepper sprayed somebody who's fighting with us, but now they're going to anaphylactic shock. Their windpipe is shutting down. They need medication. So I want to make sure that you are not one of those person who is allergic. So I don't want you to find out when you're in a fight holy shit, not only does this hurt, but I'm allergic and my windpipe is shutting down and you're going to go unconscious. Right. So those are just things that as you explore your personal defense, personal safety journey, people just we've not empowered people to ask the questions. We've not empowered them. I came up with I was thinking about this class, obviously, yesterday, or our talk, and I go into a bicycle shop because my mountain bike is kind of beat up. It's older and I can't figure out how to get the derailleur right. And I walk in and I'm like, hey, do you do X, Y, and Z? And he's like, oh, a bike that's 12 years old. I don't know if I can fix it. And I'm like, I thought about so many times when I've seen women ask officers questions, hey, officer, how do I do this? And we belittle you. Don't worry, little miss, we'll take care of it. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm a woman or a man and I go into a mixed martial arts facility, hey, I just want to learn some self-defense. I don't want to be, Conor McGregor. Well, you need to train 5 days a week. And no, the only way to do it is this. No, that's not right. So how do you you want to seek out somebody that's I get it. You're a mom, you're a dad, you're busy. You want to take 1 or 2 classes a year just to refresh your skills. And so I've seen so many people they don't know a police officer. They don't know prior military. And let me stress this too. I can remember one particular time where one of the most awesome, badass SWAT guys around, and we're at a party, and his wife was asking another officer, hey, can you teach me how to shoot? And we're all kind of like, your husband's like the shit when it comes to shooting. Like, why? Well, I cannot learn from him, right? Because there's that husband and wife spouse thing, like the way he, right? So another guy ended up taking, like, dude, your wife take her shooting, dude. She don't listen to me, right? And so he ended up, one of our friends ended up taking his wife and a couple of other wives shooting because he was a good instructor when it comes to talking to non-police. This guy was great. He ran SWAT academies. He ran ranges. He was a firearms instructor. If you were in that type of training, if you were a Marine or law enforcement, you would want this guy teaching you, but he didn't have the temperament to teach non-law enforcement. It just wasn't his thing. So his strengths were over here. And so that's what you're really looking for. If you can find a Navy SEAL who's also good with running personal self-defense courses, obviously you're looking for that highest level of expertise. Former Marine, law enforcement, SWAT officers, firearms staffs, defensive tactics instructor. But just because they're good SWAT officers does not mean they're going to be a good instructor.
Absolutely.
So, and I want you to feel empowered. So kind of that analogy with the bicycle, if I would have let myself, I'd have been like, screw you, dude. Like, I'm not letting you work on my bike. And same thing, the analogy I thought of was, I'm a single mom. And I walk into a place and I get that, oh, look at you, you're out of shape. Yeah, no kidding, buddy. I don't have time to work out that much. I got 3 kids. Like, I just that look, that belittling look is I don't want you to get turned off. If you are someone who's looking for some type of personal defense training, hey, I just want to take 2 or 3 classes a year. Reddit's a good place. Google's a good place. Look at those reviews, and Google as a women's self-defense. Google as male or just personal self-defense, right? You don't want to become. I've known teachers that have got into Krav Maga and they could kick my ass. I mean, literally, like some of these women could just. Okay, I know where you train. I know your instructor. Yeah, I'm just going to shoot you because you kick my ass, and because they train. So, and again, I don't want to ramble too much in any one direction, but I don't want you to get turned off. If it's your first time and you go into a couple of places, or maybe you take one class and you just don't click, right? We all had teachers in school that we just clicked with. Why did Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so really touch us when my friends all hated him or hated her, right? So you're looking for someone that's going to blend personal safety and really listen to you. What are you after? Sandra, you're a single woman who travels a lot, who doesn't travel. Your children are grown. So your concerns, you don't have 2 little ones in tow, right? You're looking for someone, maybe I'm that parent. Dude, I got my 3 little boys with me everywhere I go. Stay home, homemaking parent, and I need my self-defense to include how I deal with them. I just can't leave them. I can't run and leave my kids. So run, hide, fight options. Same thing when we teach teachers. When we teach teachers run, hide, fight, well, it's quite different in schools. We call it options-based response. When I teach it to high school teachers, it's very different than when I teach it to kindergarten teachers. I'm going to encourage kindergarten teachers to hunker down and maybe hide more or barricade themselves, where high school teachers, hey, that's a different dynamic. You've got big kids, you've got football. So anyways, I'll stop rambling.
And this is a perfect segue into the question that I was going to ask Joey, which is, so what about our children, and school safety? Because I never had to worry about dropping off my girls at school and wondering, am I going to see my kid later on today? So what about our kids in school safety?
So first and foremost, and this is one of those things when I'm talking about, you don't have the time. If you have time to volunteer at your kid's school, that's awesome. Not only as a connection point, but if you're a career parent and you just don't, I never volunteered at my kid's school. I was just busy. I was working during the times of school. But that is a nice thing if you can get involved, because first and foremost, let's talk about educators, amazing people. But they're all of their, and if you talk to any principal or vice principal, I think basically they say 95% of their training, if I'm going to be a teacher or a counselor, 95% of their training is in teaching. It's in counseling. I don't want, the people who teach my children to be cops, to be, no offense. I mean, if they're former Marines or former Navy SEALs, that's great, but I want them to adapt to teach my kid, right? So they get about 5 to 10% training in operations, classroom management, things like that. So you really want to kind of get involved with your kid's school to see, does your kid's teacher, does their principal take safety seriously? And their idea of taking safety seriously, their mind just might not work that way. Their mind might not work towards, some of my best principals that I worked with, our district was about 200 schools. So we were very big. I had some principals who were great. Like our discussion earlier is, Joey, I'm not a cop. I'm not a safety expert. Come in and tell me what I need, right? So they don't have to be good at it, but they have to know how to bring things in. One of the best schools I ever saw was they had emergency backpacks in every classroom. And so every classroom was ready to take care of their kids for like 12 hours in case there was an emergency. They had water, they had those portable toilets. So I would encourage you, what about school safety? First and foremost, your chances, I already shared with you, your chances of having your kid involved in an active shooter event are very low. But look at things like, for example, we recently had, we were redoing one of our schools, and it was when there was a lot of Asian hate crime, and the parents contacted us at this Mandarin immersion school, and it was right along a very busy street. The biggest threat to that school, I mean, obviously the principal was squared away and very safety conscious and had done all our options-based response training. But the most immediate threat was there was nothing stopping a car, whether intentionally or accidentally, from going right up on the curb, driving right through the chain link fence, and plowing these little ones on their playground.
Oh.
So what we did was we had those big concrete, they're called bollards. I just learned that recently. We had those pillars that would stop a car. So as a parent, again, what are the real threats? So go to your child's school, be a little nosy. I will tell you this, whether in private school, you have a little more say because you're paying money. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, in that situation, someone's going to plow into that school and they're going to hurt these kids. So first and foremost, I would urge you to get involved, and really sometimes principals will say, hey, would you mind, whether maybe you are a former Marine or you've got paramedic training, maybe you want to run a class. A lot of principals they don't know, but they're very open. So first and foremost, realize the threat. The threats are earthquakes, fires. How well is your school organized? Asked to see in California, it's called the Comprehensive School Safety Plan, where they're actually very detailed. Every school has to update theirs once a year. They have a public and a private version because the tactical stuff is hidden from people.
Yeah.
But those are the kind of questions that you want to ask. And we could do that. School safety in itself for parents is a 2 to 3 hour class on its own, which is, well, and also one of the biggest things, I know we need to move on to another topic. However, I will say this, I had a parent in a class recently, and her biggest concern was, I don't want to make my child paranoid. Child was already having some mental health issues as a result of COVID. And so I said, they're like, should I get them the plate for their backpack? Should I talk to them about active shooter? And I said, why don't you worry about their mental health first, because that's more of an immediate threat. Oh, I'm not going to say, let's bring your kid in who's already having anxiety, already having depression, already feeling detached, all the things that we saw with so many kids because of the school closures. And now I'm just going to compound it, when in all reality, the biggest threat to that child is really suicide, self-harm,
Yeah.
personal development, that kind of stuff. So, which is why one of the things we have not gone as a society, and people say, I want kids to have active shooter training. Well, what if that kid, my old partner, his daughter died of SIDS at 15 months. His 5-year-old watched him give CPR to her little sister. So
Whoa.
she has literal, she's about 15 now. She has literal PTSD. So as I mentioned, making my daughter paranoid and giving her all this stuff, his daughter could not handle that because rightfully so, she's traumatized by seeing what she saw. Her dad give CPR to her little sister who didn't make it. So you as a parent know your child.
Yes.
Don't bring them to an active shooter class if they've already got some trauma like that. Maybe that's something you handle. And I not only respect, but encourage parents. You know what's best for your child. You know your child better than anyone else.
Right.
So you've got to customize. And the most immediate threat is the mental health, not the active shooter.
Oh,
Right.
I love that you point that out, Joey, because yes, that's our immediate threat, the mental health issue
Absolutely. Which
throughout.
we could talk about. We could talk about that another 2 to 3 hours, right? We can go in that direction, and that's why these things are. When we talk about personal safety, is what does your family need? I don't want you getting turned off by somebody saying, "I'm going to make you a full-on marksman." No, I want to have a gun in my home, but I want to know how to use it. But I don't need to do single-person, close quarter battle room clearing. I just need to know how to use my firearm at my house, and so you seek out those subject matter experts, looking at the reviews based on what you need. You based on your threats, how your house is laid out. Do you live in an urban area? Do you live in a rural area? In some of our rural areas in San Diego, I've talked to sheriff's deputies where they don't have enough deputies, and they're calling because we're along the border. They're calling for Border Patrol to handle their calls for them, but Border Patrol might not be available. I run into situations where sheriff's helicopter has gone and handled domestic violence calls way out in the backcountry because it's going to take the deputy 30 minutes to get there. And our sheriff's helicopters are great. They're two deputy crews, and they'll land and handle a domestic violence call. So how close are you going to have that medical and police response? Maybe you do need more fire. So where do you live in relation to that 911 call? Right? How quick is help going to get there? Inner city environment, you might have 3 cops there within 2 minutes. You live in the boonies. So it's also important to understand what is your local police staffing? What are their response times?
So interesting, Joey, because I mean, living in San Diego, I'm like, oh no, a police will be here as soon as I call 911. It's just like my right. I feel like it's my entitlement, so to speak, as an American.
Yes.
It's unfortunate because now, the reputation with our law enforcement has declined, which like breaks my heart. I have the utmost respect for the work you've done for police officers who put their life on just out there every single day to ensure that we're taken care of, Joey. So I'm so grateful that you're here, and because of the importance in self-defense. I have invited you to be one of our guest speakers at my next women's empowerment retreat. So for our viewers that are watching, I know they've been watching attentively. So if you're, this woman who wants to know more about self-defense, you're going to see Joey. You're going to meet Joey. You can ask him yourself at my next women's empowerment retreat, which I'm hosting in La Jolla, California. So ladies, if you're interested, in my women's empowerment retreat in San Diego, California, specifically La Jolla, you can message me. You can go to my website, sandragonzalez.com, or you can go to fitconfidentgoddess.com and apply to see if you're an ideal fit. But I love that you bring such an important topic up for discussion, because this is what we need. We need empowerment. We need training, Joey. And I know in a way I've manifested you in my life and your wife because, this is so important to empower people, period. And when it comes to self-defense, I mean, I've learned so much in this time alone, then and I continue learning from you. So it's so important to ask you these questions directly, and I this runner from Memphis, I think she was from Memphis, right? She was abducted, like violently.
Horrible.
Horrible.
We had one of those in San Diego, Chelsea King, several years ago, where she was running, a young girl. I believe she was a high school or early college student. Same thing, running around a beautiful lake here in San Diego, and was abducted and murdered, and they found her body in the lake. Which, so yeah, I mean, you need to be able to protect yourself. And I'll close with this. And we didn't even get a chance to touch on this, but when we're in person, that's really. Zoom is cool because we can touch a lot of people. We can meet a lot of people that can't travel. But when you're talking about these kind of topics, we didn't even get to touch on how to apply those first aid. I mean, when I don't have a chance to go over what I recommend people carry, but just to close with an example, you look at the Route 91 tragedy, the Las Vegas shooting, where we lost so many people and so many people were injured. You look at the Gabby Gifford shooting. When you read the after action reports, that long, you can go online and read all this stuff. It's kind of boring. I mean, I wouldn't, unless you're really interested in that. But it's important to touch on that the things that you can carry, that if you were at that Route 91 shooting, it's going to take fire medics a while to get in. Also, what we found during those mass casualty events is police departments, fire, and emergency medical services are running out of supplies. So if you've got a mass casualty event, the Aurora, Colorado shooting, right? I mean, you get one ambulance on scene, and then you get two ambulances on scene. All the life-saving equipment, if I've got a mass casualty event like a Route 91, where I believe was the final death toll 51, I think, that's a lot of people to treat. And so if you are in one of those situations where you do get shot, where there's an earthquake, right? Or you are in a car crash, most common, this stuff is going to save you in a car crash, and you're bleeding out, and it's arterial bleeding. Maybe it's a femoral artery bleed, and you've got 90 seconds before you go unconscious. You probably got 3 minutes before you die. You put that tourniquet on. So these are things that you can look back. You're in a car accident. You're taking one of your elderly parents to the doctor. You've got your little one. Little ones bleed out even quicker. So even if you're in the heart of a city, EMS and police are probably not going to get there enough for an arterial quick enough for it to save your life during a femoral or a brachial artery bleed.
How unfortunate.
I mean, we can go when we're in person and we have the time to really tailor it to your audience. Exactly. That's where this becomes fun. That's where you go to one of those, you go to a class or like your seminar or your summit, and I want you walking away feeling empowered. Like, okay, I don't want you walking away paranoid. I want you walking away going, okay, I know how to kind of protect myself. We can talk about firearms. If you do want to have a gun in your home, how do you secure it? How do you use it? How should you seek out training? If you do want to go the pepper spray route, okay, X, Y, and Z needs to happen. If you want to go taser, X, Y, and Z needs to happen. One of the biggest things I admire is if somebody says, I cannot shoot somebody. Great. Now I know what we're working with. I'm not going to criticize you. Oh, you don't have the guts to shoot somebody. Absolutely not. I've run into people that were police officers and quit after a couple months because they're like, I just don't like carrying a gun. Thank you for admitting that. And you should feel empowered that, okay, now you know what you're working with, move on to a career where you're happier. So I know we're going a little over, but that's what we get to talk about in person.
Exactly. And that's why they're going to want to come to this women's empowerment retreat, because that's what you have done for me personally, Joey. And I know you're going to do for them is bring more ease to that discomfort so they can be empowered and walk away as that empowered, not scared, which I've already incorporated some of the things you've helped me with being here by myself, So I personally want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for, number one, being in my life. I just feel automatically safe having a man of your caliber in my personal and professional life. Thank you. And then how can our viewers reach out to you? How can they connect with you?
I can give you my email. It's J Florentino, JFLORENTINO 73 at gmail.com. And I'll give my cell phone number. It's 619-547-8369. And the reason, one, I just enjoy talking to people about this stuff. And two, one of the biggest things when you're teaching these classes, or you have even 45 minutes with somebody, is I hate leaving people with open-ended questions. They're like, but what about this? A parent may want to call and say, look, I've got a suicidal child. What do I do?
Oh,
those types of things. And so what is it? That's another thing when we're in person is it gives the opportunity for those after talks, for those follow-ups, or I've gone in to teach a class for a particular school, and the teachers have really taken me in a different direction, right? Where we're tailoring it. There's obviously stuff in a school you need to get out. We need to make sure that you know how to save the kids and all that kind of stuff. But when you're teaching before parent groups, what are their real concern? And it could be based on just where the school is at or where your community is at. Hey, I live in the boonies versus living in a city, or I am a single parent. My partner travels a lot. I'm home alone a lot. With my kids. So that's the most important thing is don't get your questions answered, and don't get turned off by if you get the wrong instructor, because that instructor might be great for somebody else.
right.
You're
But
trying to find it might not be good for you.
yeah. So in closing, Joey, this is why you are a resident expert, because you possess that social and emotional intelligence to answer those questions, to be very approachable, to break things down that could be very scary, convoluted at times. You break it down very easily to understand. So thank you for that. I want to again, thank you for being here. And for my viewers that are watching, thank you, ladies and gents, for tuning into this episode of Pull the Trigger. Again, if you need to reach out to Joey, reach out through his email, or you can reach me specifically and I'll give you his contact information. I know you thoroughly enjoyed today's episode. I hope you stay safe and you have an incredible day.
Glutathione is a big word. It's the body's own master antioxidant. It's a scavenger for free radical, bacteria, and viruses. There are no products in the market with the ingredient NASET. NASET increases the production of glutathione that's in our body already to strengthen and enhance our immune system, elevate sense of well-being, support muscle strength and endurance, cognitive function, and liver support. It helps with increased energy and blood sugar regulation. Get your bottle of GSH Plus from www.salvationnutra.com.